Green Bay hustle, grind it up. Hit the field, we don't bluff. Touchdown dances, feel the love. Jordan's got that MVP stuff. It's time for Ohio. Let's go. Packers bringing that show. It's time for you know who. Wanna go, gonna glow.
Aloha, and welcome back to another episode of the Ohana Packers Edition podcast. The podcast where Iowa Joe and I, two dudes talking football, the Packers have beat the Bears, and Packers fans, this one is out to you.
The Bears still suck. 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 They really suck. Yes, the Bears still suck.
I always forget how long that song actually is because the most
Oh
other
man, that clip right there was just 17 seconds. That song is like 3 minutes. I
right.
did bring it up to Ramage and a couple other people that I think, with as old as it is, somebody needs to like revamp it. Because I mean, it's still referencing like Jim McMahon and Dick Butkus and Mike Ditka and
Gotta update it to all their. Well, they can do all their quarterbacks since McMahon and do it to dubstep or something like that. But um, I joked on Twitter and Blue Sky that this was a University of Michigan C's get degrees win for the Packers. And I mean, talk about this is the definition of how you let inferior teams hang around for the upset. So many sports cliches we're putting on, but the most important one is Green Bay snatched victory from the jaws of defeat. Granted, jaws that they themselves like kept sticking their feet in, but thank goodness. And honest to God, when I saw the broadcast angle when Carl Brooks shot up the A gap, I was like, please, Carl. I was like, Carl, let your arms grow like MJ at the end of a Space Jam. I was like, please. And then it helped that for whatever reason, Santos kicked that ball flat. And it's not, it was only like a 46-yard field goal, but he did kick it flatter than he kicked his 50-yard field goal earlier in the game. But thank you, Carl Brooks. Thank you for getting us another victory today. And we talked about it on our preview show. This win was absolutely paramount. Like basically, you have no hopes at winning the division if you blow this game, which Green Bay tried to do for 59 minutes and 57 seconds of this game. So the irony of it is it didn't start that way. You run the gamut of everything from Jair trying to go but not being able to go the whole 60 minutes, the offense looking great to open the game and then just stubbing all 10 piggies along the way. A little bit of everything, but let's just cut to the chase, Joe. For fresh, in addition to my new underwear after watching that game, what was fresh for you from today's game?
surprisingly, with as what's the word you want to use for it, as poor of a game of when it was, there are a few freshes here. So there's one obvious one. I'm gonna take the one that is kind of like middle road. I'll let you have the obvious on top of the obvious, but Britton Cox. I mean, this guy has been riding the pine for the majority of the season so far. Gets his little bit of a chance to go today, and what's he do? 1 sack, 2 QB hits, 2 tackles for loss. What was his total tackles? I think it was like 3 total tackles. Yeah, 3 total tackles, 2 solo, 1 sack, 2 tackles for loss, and then I read that he had 2 QB pressures. Like I said, for a guy that was riding the pine for the majority of the season, it's good to see him really get his chance to go. This is a kid that we've all kind of been hyped on, that if he can keep his head on straight, he should be a baller. That was the only issue with him at at the 2 schools he went to, Georgia and Florida, that he was just kind of a bonehead.
And
But if he,
I think Monty tweeted about that. He goes, "You know how much of a head case you have to be talented at football and kicked off of Georgia and Florida's football teams." So, and to that point, the most hilarious part of his game is the fact that he's the one that drew the unsportsmanlike conduct on the Bears, and because someone headbutted him after that one punt or whatever. I forget who it was. I saw someone tweet it. They're like, "That's a bold choice, headbutting Brenton Cox Jr. after a play." So keep your head on straight, kid. Good job.
you could tell that he wanted to go back at him, but that coach or assistant was there and was like, "No, no, bud, no, we're not going to do this."
But yeah, like, and I don't want to take. I'm with you. We'll stay in the positive with this one because if you want to parse the film and stuff, like Cox just was like, "Fuck it, I am popping this thing into forward, and we are putting the accelerator to the floor, and I'm gonna tackle someone on these plays." And yes, he's got to read his keys and all that kind of stuff, but how many times we saw it later in this game, guys miss, clean tackle or sack attempts. You got to give a guy who, like you said, has not played, who has not been active for a game this season, you have got to give that guy credit for when the opportunity was there for him, he converted both times for big negative plays. And it feels like since Super Bowl 45, the story for not just young defenders, just Packers defenders is too often in key moments when there are gimme chances. Will Redmond drops an arm punt from Tom Brady. You've got all the other dropped interceptions in playoff games by Packers DBs and stuff like that. And you've just got to appreciate that Cox seized the moment and completed the opportunity that was available to him. And that's just, I don't know what the future holds, but, like I said, you've got to just be happy that he had his opportunities and he took advantage of them.
and and I know there's probably going to be some negatives to his game today, but I have to give him the benefit of the doubt just because, again, we've both said it. He's not played all friggin' season. He's not even been active all friggin' season. So for him to be active now and do what he did, what others on the team that are getting paid a ton more money than he is couldn't do, he was able to do. So, and he took advantages of his moments because the sack and the tackle for loss, he was uncovered. There was nobody, they were missed blocks, and he took great advantage of it. And that's what you expect out of this team. How many times have, like you were saying with the dropped interceptions, I'll one up you on that. What about the arm tackles and the missed opportunities when it comes to taking those free shots? You get a free runner and they slow up because they don't, because of some stupid ass reason. And, they don't make the play on that end. So, like I said, I got to give
Yeah.
Cox his due on that one.
No, absolutely. And, just to take it a step further, like other teams are going to see that, the margins on difference between him making those two plays and Lucas being taken advantage of on a couple zone read plays, that's the margin. Is like Cox happened to do it on plays where, he, just like this Bears offense, he's unscouted as well. He hasn't played many worthwhile NFL snaps. So it's like, okay, like he was more in like, we don't care about that guy. 57 can do whatever the fuck he wants and we just don't give a shit. And to that point, that's what we're giving him his flowers for, is like the Bears treated him in that way, and he said he shoved it back in their face, and that deserves to get celebrated. Though I don't know if I'm gonna have the same one as you, but so because I have two, and neither one of them was the Cox point, but the first one I'm gonna go with. So a guy that not just us, but a lot of people have been bashing, questioning this season, and going back to last season a little bit, Bisaccia. But I thought that, we didn't kick a field goal today. Didn't I thought kick coverage was pretty good today. Punts were good. Whelan had a good punt. It wasn't the greatest ball off his foot, but the thing rolled inside to the 5-yard line. But the biggest play of the game, the final play of the game, was the result of Bisaccia pointing something out in the special teams media room and saying that the Bears on their field goal or point after kicks, they do not they basically open up a free rush lane, and we're going to take advantage of it. And to a man, all the guys on that interior D line were basically just saying like, who's going to be the guy that's going to get the block? And it was Carl Brooks, because they all to a man said like, we saw it all week. Coach was pointing it out that they're going to do this thing and it's going to open. And really, both A gaps were open on that final field goal, and it was just a matter of who got there first, and it was Carl. But I mean, if we're gonna bash him every week when just dumb shit happens, you got to give him his flowers for when it happened. And also one more, the punt return that Jaden Reed had before the Packers' final touchdown drive, that was a massive play because catches the ball at like the 5 yard line. I know some people have issues with where people catch punts and stuff like that. To me, in the modern NFL, with how good punters are, you've got to be comfortable fielding the ball between the 10 and the 5, because with the way these punters can, put the nose down, and it does that golf kick up and all that kind of crap. Like, you've got to fair catch balls from the 5 out. But Reed finally towed the line, played on the more aggressive side of it, and decided, I'm going to return this thing. He returned it like 16 yards or whatever, and it was massive for the Packers to push the ball. Let's see, what was it? Was it 11 or 16? I'm getting my yards
16.
and my 16. So yeah, and that was massive. You shorten the field and set the offense. You set the table for the offense. So Reed's really only positive plays of the game was obviously his touchdown reception and then that punt return, but two just monumental plays, and on the back of a special teams unit that's been bemoaned, but it deserves credit for really helping to tip the scale in a game that needed every bit of tipping because of things we'll talk about later on in this game.
And the only thing that I have to say against it is if they've seen this all week, how come they didn't block the other one earlier too?
And like I said, I do think part of it is Santos kick, for whatever reason. Like I said, that kick just looked low no matter what. But yeah, but I do think they were close on some of the other ones. But hey, I'll take it on the last one. So whatever it
No,
takes,
I get
man.
it. I just, you got to play devil's advocate on
Yeah.
that. You see something all week and you know how to defend it, but you only get one out of, how many was it? One out of three. If we want to believe Meatloaf, it's 2 out of 3 ain't bad, and so 1 out of 3 is a failing grade. Uh, but it's great to hear that they actually had something. I even I hate using this term for the messages over on Blue Sky, but I even skeeted it after it happened. Oh my God, special teams did something right for a change, and that's the truth. And like you said, even the Jaden Reed one, but I think Jaden basically knew he had to do something because they needed the field position. I said this on the live stream post game. There really wasn't much for the special teams to do today. They had one punt, they had a couple kickoffs, they had a couple kickoff returns, but other than that, it was a pretty quiet day for that. There's no field goals or anything to really worry about. So for them they had to be well rested to be able to get on the field for that one. So, it's great. And if you go back and look, depending on how Santos kicked it, it was going to be blocked either way, because it was either going to be Carl Brooks or it was going to be Slayton, because both those big guys had ups and they got up there, and there was the only way that it would have not been blocked is if they would have split that like half a foot gap between Slayton and Brooks. So yeah, you got to, and like you said, we rip on Bisaccia for the last year and a half. You got to give it to him when it comes true. When his unit actually does something worthwhile. So yeah, you got to give him that one.
And it's been deserved.
Um,
Like, let's not shake any bets about it. It's been deserved. But yeah, like when it counted, like we were saying, got to give him his flowers when it turns out when he does make a positive difference, I should say.
so I was giving you the low hanging fruit one, so I'm just going to go ahead and take it so we can take it off the board, and that's got to be Christian Watson. That kid stepped up big time today. Uh, well, I guess Sunday because this will come out on Tuesday. But what the hell? Shut up.
To,
um,
to plug our merchandise, to plug our merch, boy, he did it today.
yeah, pretty much. And he really did because he had two big catches that were like improbable catches, and I. It's so weird to say because it's going to sound weird when I say this, but on that last catch where he caught it, got up, and ran it, I fully believed as a Packer fan it was a catch, but as a guy who's watched enough of the NFL bungle things, I just had this feeling that the refs were going to come back and say, "Oh no, incomplete," and ball on such and such down, and it was going to deflate the whole damn thing. But there was no conclusive evidence to overturn it, and it was a hell of a catch. And it was a smart move by Watson to realize he hadn't been touched down to get up and run again. The only thing I wish is they would have paid it off and got him the touchdown to top it off. But it whatever. 4 catches, 150 yards. That was it. You or was it somebody else that was talking last week that they were predicting this was going to be the week?
No, it must have been someone
Christian,
else.
yeah, they were predicting this was the week Christian was going to really pop off, and what better way to pop off than 4 catches and 150 yards? So I got to give him a real, like I said, this was an obvious fresh.
Yeah, and like I know he had the rough game in Detroit, but like I said, those conditions were not good. Jordan was enough off and bad weather conditions that I'm not gonna put that totally on him that he's just like lost out there or anything. I do think Christian has really improved on. To the layman, this is gonna sound stupid, but I do think he has vastly improved this season on doing standard wide receiver things and not just being like a deep threat and a decoy for to pull coverage and a gravity player, so to speak. We've seen him make more hitch routes, more digs, and stuff like that. But today was a sign that Love is healthy because they're able to do more from under center, because Watson, he's improved in those things, but he's still better at it when we're doing it from under center and or there's an element of play action to the play, and it just helps. It helps cover up the line between his still developing route running precision against his just gaudy natural athleticism. And you saw it on this, like the first improbable catch that looked like one of those far fuck it chuck it throws from 95 and 96 where you've seen it, where I think it was 96 where he throws that Hail Mary at the end of the half to Antonio Freeman, pretty much that same style where he's rolling to his right and he just hucks it down the field. And really, Watson is not in the best position to catch that ball out of the two, out of the three, him and the two defenders. I thought the two defenders had a much better positioning on the play, and Watson just used all of his God-given physical and athletic talents to pull that ball in. And then, like you said, that over route, Love is on the move because he's maneuvering the pocket, dives, same thing. I had that same feeling. Like the whole way I was like, that's a catch because his left hand, I don't care what his right hand does, his left hand is clearly under the ball the whole time. And and then my part of it wasn't even the like, oh, like the Packers always get screwed on this kind of thing. It's more the like, oh no, all the guys in the booth believe are agreeing with me and saying not the same thing, but you just get that like, oh no, like it's the whole like,
Oh, I had that too. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, I
it's the
get
whole.
you.
It's like when everyone does the like for primetime games. They're like, oh no, everyone's picking the Packers kind of thing and stuff like that. So yeah, had that thought, but I was like, okay, good. They didn't. The refs didn't screw the pooch. They left it as it should have been a catch, and yeah, like you said, just a heads up play by Watson to get back up and run. And it's like you said, it's too bad he couldn't get a touchdown. I saw some people saying he should have stayed outside on that one. Eli Hicks can run too, and he had the angle on him. I I actually thought, if anything, he should have cut back one more time across the field instead of trying to like lightning bolt his way back up the sideline. So I like you said, hands down a great game for Watson. And then one more that deserves to be in the fresh pile is 3 penalties all game, and I don't think they had any more that were like, they might have had like one more that wasn't accepted because the Bears had a better player or something like that. But for a team that we've been just so critical on for the whole season about this team is too undisciplined, they were still undisciplined in other ways today, but it was just good to see them play a disciplined game from a penalty standpoint. And the other side of it kind of went into it with the Watson thing. Love looks healthy. I don't know if he's 100%. You know, his 2 injuries are kinds that'll linger or whatever, and he's still getting hit and stuff. But the amount of under center work they did today, basically all his throws except the interception were good throws, and even the interception was good read, good decision making. Just unfortunately uncorked that thing high, and of course the the corner covering the route in back of Kraft happens to be looking right at the ball. So I thought overall it was a very good to a great game for Love. The interception is more of an unfortunate one than a what the fuck are you doing one. But
I don't know.
yeah,
I kind of disagree with you on that point that I think it was a what are you doing type thing because he had Kraft pretty well like wide open. He
right,
didn't have to put any air on it. He just had to nail Kraft in the
yeah,
chest. And I also had to pull a little bit on Kraft because why did he alligator arm it? I didn't think he was going to make the catch, but he alligator or whatever you want to call it, alligator arm it or Tyrannosaurus Rex
yeah,
arm it or whatever. He could have at least knocked it down because
yeah. Or even if
you
he
know
like if he tips it with both hands, it like drops behind him kind of thing instead of going all the way to the goal line and stuff like that. So
right.
like I said, I do think I put it more in the unfortunate pile because it is just like it's not a what the fuck like the pick sixes he has against
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Lions and the Rams. It's more just like shit. Like of course that happened, but
It was
yeah.
decision making. Like I said, because it looked like he had Kraft where all he had to do was put it in Kraft's chest, and for some reason he sailed it. So I don't know if that's part of the injury tweaking or uncomfortable, not sure of the injury, whatever. But it definitely was not a ball that should have been intercepted had
Yeah.
he done what he should have done and just put it where Kraft was, not try to up it, not try to, you know, do something special with it. So I agree, it wasn't a major well, I think it was a major thing because that was kind of a tide turner
Oh no,
that
no,
that
no.
allowed
In
the
terms of game flow, all that kind of, I agree. Like it's a you can't have red zone turnovers, and you're really going to put Chicago under the because you're about to go up 14-3. If you at worst you're gonna I'm pretty sure Kraft gets the first down, and you can argue with the rest of the red zone struggles whether they would have scored or not after, but you're at least walking away 10-3 after that. More likely 14-3. But so from a game, I'm just talking about overall, like how Love played in the game. I thought he had a pretty good game outside of that one throw. So that it's more that side of it. Yeah.
health wise, yeah, I think he did, but I think there was some decision making between him and LaFleur that kind of marred what the offense was.
Oh, that's in my moldy pile. So
Yeah.
I'm not going to bury the lead much on that one. But yeah. So, but anything else for you that's fresh, semi fresh for you today, or you want to go into stale?
um I mean, Josh Jacobs, he's continuously being fresh. Yeah, stat line, he's not like, I mean, it's still pretty good. 18 carries, 76 yards, 1 TD, and then added 4 receptions, 58 yards. So, I mean, total yards is up there, but he didn't hit 100 in either aspect. But man, was he moving well out there. And then, just if you want to add all together the running backs as a whole, Emmanuel Wilson looked like his butt was on fire the way he was running through some of them holes. So I definitely got to add them to a fresh pile.
Yeah. Really, and really, the fact that they didn't have a lot of carries is not their fault. Green Bay only had, what did they have? One, shoot. you only had what, 6 offensive possessions? One, two, three, not counting the end of half. Yeah, you only have 6 possessions. So, and one of them was a 4 and out. So 5 and out. So not, it's not like they had, so many opportunities to be given the ball. So yeah, they did more than enough with what they were given. And I agree with you. Wilson looks like a guy who's like, I am not losing the RB2. Um, Brooks is still going to have a role because I do think he is still the best pass protector out of the group. But Wilson, just the way he runs suits what Green Bay wants to do on offense so even better than what Brooks, because Brooks is sort of like a light James Starks where it's very like cutbacky and like against the grain kind of thing. But like Wilson kind of brings the like sledgehammer that Jacobs does. He doesn't cut as much as Jacobs does. That's why I liken him to Ryan Grant, where it's like Wilson's gonna pick a hole and damn it, I'm putting my foot through the floor on the accelerator, and it worked really well today for the Packers. But overall, very good game for
What's
the running
weird,
back.
I just looked at it that Wilson is like 10 pounds heavier than Brooks, and Brooks is like 2 inches taller.
Yeah,
So they're similar to each other, but yeah, Wilson just when he gets the ball in his hand, he's dynamic. He's got like amazing speed. So yeah, altogether they'd have to be a fresh pile.
yep. So we'll start to get into. There's going to be a lot of stale and a lot of moldy in this because this was not a hunky dory win for the team. This is a glad they got it, not a feel good win for the Packers today. But what is up the top of your stale pile today?
There's so many that could go either way. I'm gonna go. This could even go in the moldy pile, but I'm gonna put it in stale for right now. The offensive play calling, some of those decision making, some of that play calling, just it was not a typical LaFleur uh, offensive game. I don't know if he was worried about Love re-injuring something. I don't know if he was worried about whatever, but and I kind of said this during the live stream. I get that people are getting upset about the end arounds and shit that are getting done with Jaden Reed and they're failing, but I don't want them taken out of the playbook because when used properly, we'll take this quote from one of my favorite movies. When done correctly, no can defend, and it just too bad you guys can't see this because Mike is just dying over there. But that's how I feel about the end arounds and stuff. Is that if they're done properly and used at the correct times, you can't stop them. You're going to get continuous yards with them. It just for some reason Lafleur just throws it out there like, yeah, go for it. And that's the times when the defenses are prepared for it. You got to do it when they're not prepared for it. You got to do it when you're doing a little bit more of, play out of shotgun a little bit more, play out of, pistol a little bit more. That's when teams aren't suspecting it because it's kind of like a play action thing. You're faking off to one and you're handing it to the other. Well, if you're using a ton of play action, teams are going to be ready for it because that's how they're going to know it's an end around. So while I don't want it taken out, I think LaFleur needs to be a little bit smarter when it comes to using those calls.
I agree, and I was actually going to put Lafleur in the moldy pile because I just thought he had a craptastic game in those two empty red zone possessions. You can't put the first one totally on because Love throws the bad ball that becomes the interception, but from the second and one play to that interception play, he was. I did not like a single one of the calls. So that sequence, your second and one, I hate RPOs in the red zone because my whole thing with it is be all in on something. Don't try and don't try and toe the line in the especially against a good red zone defense in the Bears. Commit, and if you have to meet them head on head, so be it. But why does that play draw a penalty is because they run in the Packers run in RPO. Love pulls the ball to throw. It's second one. Love pulls it to throw. The wide receivers are all they either didn't know they were going to run an RPO or everyone takes a step too long to get into a route, and therefore Love has to hold it. And then by the time he throws the ball, Elton is like, something should have happened by now. So you can't blame Elton for that penalty. That's on guys not being in the right position. And then the second down play is the Jaden Reed run. So after the penalty, it's 2nd and 6, and it's the Jaden Reed run, which so it's not an end around that one. It's a Jaden Reed lines up as a split back in the backfield, and the point that I definitely agree with you is I absolutely hate that they didn't disguise that look at all. There was no like look like you're handing it to Brooks and then you turn around, you reverse pivot and turn around and hand it to Reed. You just run a straight sweep with Jaden Reed, which like I get wanting to get the ball in his hands however you can, but throw him you didn't throw him the ball, after the second drive of the game kind of thing. And it's like, yeah, I just think that's a case of LaFleur getting way too cute for no reason at all. And then, so that's the first, and then Love throws the interception the next play on 3rd and 11. Then the second empty possession is when they just, Love ends up getting stopped short of the goal line. The first mistake he makes, so it's after the fuck it Christians down there somewhere play. 1st and goal from the 8 or 9 yard line. I knew the play was kind of fucked when they come out of the commercial break. Christian Watson is they show Christian Watson on the sideline, and as the camera pans and backs out a little bit, Dobbs is right next to him, and Jaden Reed is like kind of like a few people down from them on the sideline. And it's like, you are goal to go in the low red zone, and you do not have your top 3 wide receivers on the field. And then you run a straight, long developing sweep run. And it's like, you have nobody who's going to make the Bears think you're throwing out there because you walk out Malik Heath and Bo Melton out there. And it's like, that, like you said, that's one of those where it's like, I don't know where LaFleur's brain went on that play. And then on the 4th down play, Watson isn't out there. I can't remember if Dobbs is on the field. And then Jaden Reed is running an orbit motion in the backfield. So he basically doesn't matter because you've got to score on that play. And, by the time he runs a route that takes him into or near the end zone, the ball's got to be out at that point because Chicago is going to blitz or they're going to have so many guys in coverage. It's not going to matter at that point. And so I just didn't like his red zone sequencing. I thought that it cost the team points. But I will say the one thing I did agree with is going for it on that 4th and goal. No, they didn't get it. Love comes up like a yard short, but I do agree with it's such a fine line because some people are like, oh, you kick the field goal, get within 2, all that kind of stuff. But I like the aggression, going for the touchdown. Your defense is playing a little too loose because of the injury to Jair, all that other kind of stuff. But yeah, so I do agree with the aggression there. But the things that led up to that point and that led up to the Love interception, I do not understand or agree with any of those plays. I think that LaFleur, whichever you want to say, he got too cute, he got too smart for his own good, whichever way you want to look at it, I did not care for any of those sequences, and it cost the team 6 to 14 points because of it.
Yeah, and I think the only reason it's in my stale instead of the moldy is I just got to give him the benefit of the doubt, just because up until the last couple of the games, his offensive, you tell her she's interrupting stuff. I'm keeping tabs over here. The last up until the last couple games, his offense has been just his offensive play calls have just been soaring. And, the only reason they haven't had success is just because loves injury and stuff like that. Otherwise, he's called great games and everything else. But yeah, and the 2-point conversion I thought was a friggin' uh,
I
boneheaded
his
call.
his fourth, like his goal to go in short yardage, like those like critical get a yard plays. I'm kind of like it's the opposite on those ones. Instead of like overthinking it, he like goes complete caveman and just takes football back to the Stone Age, and it's just like we'll just run it up the middle or something like that. And it's like that play, and that was one where it's like I'm okay running the read option on that. And it's weird that they didn't run the read option there. And if the whole concern is that Jordan isn't healthy enough to do it, put Malik out there and do it. And honestly, and I know some people are like, but then they know you're going to do something with Malik. But then it's like maybe two guys are like, oh my God, Malik Willis. And someone doesn't go for Josh and it opens, and then Malik will hand the ball off kind of thing. So, like, if Jordan, you're not doing it because Jordan's not healthy, then go put Malik in and do it kind of thing. So, yeah,
Well,
I'm with you.
kind of to piggyback on that, they may know something's up if he put Malik in, but they don't know what is up because of how
Right.
well Malik has been when he's been put in. So, is he going to throw it? Is he going to run it? Is he going to hand it off? What are we doing here? Or you had a great play a couple games ago with Tucker Craft.
Yep.
Why couldn't you do the same exact thing to get 2 yards?
Yep. Exactly. That's,
You
yeah.
have your own version of the tush push where you just run Tucker Craft in underneath the center and you just shove him out there. Hell, go back to the early 2000s and bring U71 back. The old what was Barry play. I can't think of what his first name was. Was it Kevin
Kevin.
Barry?
Yeah.
Where it's an extra lineman. Everybody knows it's a run, but they couldn't stop it because there was a beefy offensive lineman out there. Or how many times have we seen in the past? Kenny Clark's lined up in the backfield. Mike Daniels is lined up in the backfield. BJ Raji lined up in the backfield. You can't tell me there's not a guy that they can't put in the backfield just to eat up blocks or just to help shove Tucker Craft into the end zone. There's a lot of things that they could have done. They could have got a little cutesy with it. They went plain Jane, and it ended up blowing up in their face. And this game was a lot closer than what it should have been.
Yep. So for my stale, it's going to be something also on coaching. It's Halfley, and I love 90% of what Halfley has done this season. I really like the direction he's trying to take this defense in. The one that I do not like is anytime Jair is not in a game or leaves a game with an injury, his reaction every time is, and I understand it. I understand why he does it, but he can't make this his binky where it's like Jair's out, we're playing off coverage, softer zones, and it just people are saying like he turns into Joe Barry. It's not, because you still see him blitz, you still see him try to do other things, but the coverage is just so loose that those blitzes, those pressures, they don't matter. And like I saw on one of them, you know, bemoaned Lucas Van Ness. He has like a power rush where he puts Braxton Jones into Caleb Williams' backside, but it doesn't matter because Caleb's throwing to a wide open Cole Kmet. And the 3rd and 19 play that led to the tipped field goal, what happens? The first and second down, we see this front finally get to know like they can't run it at this point. I know they have like a timeout or whatever, but they can't chance running the ball at this point. You've got to get yards. They've got to get in field goal range. And so it's like the pass rush is like, fuck it, we're there. 2 plays in a row, Rashawn puts Braxton Jones into Caleb Williams. The first one gets TJ Satan like a sack. And the second one, Rashawn sacks both Caleb Williams and Braxton Jones on it. And then on third down, back off the coverage. And, Caleb breaks away from Inagbare and then gets like a very easy throw on the run to Rome Odunze for a pickup of 15 on 3rd and 19 that sets up it sets up the first down for them. And so I get it. So the concept is like, okay, I don't have my best cover guy. I can't count on one side of the field being covered. So I'm gonna, play it a little safer to, just to try and hedge my bets and, make sure we keep everything in front of us, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. But you've got to give defenses something to look at, especially an offense that has been so out of whack. And the I will talk about the misconception about how the not misconception, the lack of understanding by the average fan on how difficult it is to prepare for this situation where the Bears fire their offensive coordinator and have unscouted offense for the Packers to deal with. But you cannot let your personnel dictate how you call a game like that. I know it's players, not plays, and stuff like that, but it goes twofold. So one, you just let a guy in Caleb Williams who has struggled for like 5-6 weeks straight. You let him have just warm up throws because there's no tight windows because guys are just running free because you're playing soft zone. And the second part of that is because you're not creating tight window throws, you're just allowing the Bears to bleed you to death by 1,000. What did I say earlier? The Packers only got 6 possessions in this game. You're the better team. You should want more possessions because you're better. So you want more opportunities to score and put the worst team at a deficit. But because you just let Chicago won the time of possession like 36-24, so that's a 12-minute, that's 20% of the game, that disparate discrepancy in time of possession, and that's all a result of just playing like, and I hate to say that he's playing scared, but he is playing afraid of his personnel. And it's like your whole scheme at the back of it is being aggressive. It's, to play the way that Halfley wants to play. It's aggression. It's striking first and all that kind of stuff. Sure, maybe you don't have quite the guys. You don't have Jair out there. You don't have corners you truly trust. Whatever. But you know what? Just go out there, be aggressive, play at 100%. And if you play man and press up, maybe someone gets beat and you give up a big touchdown. Hey, that happens. The other guys are paid to play as well. But maybe everyone gets a good jam, the quarterback holds the ball a little longer, and you get a sack. You get a strip, a forced fumble, whatever. So have it in the still because, like I said, I understand why Halfley feels like he has to play it, and I do think it's more. I do think it's as much on the offense not producing enough as it is Halfley being like stuck between a rock and a hard place. But I do want to see, and you basically had several weeks now, you've had different color commentators basically begging the Packers to be more aggressive in their coverage profile at different points in the game. And it's something that I do hope we see. And hey, I'll be the first to say, like, you're gonna have to live with some blown coverages or some just wins by the other team, but you can't just let them bleed. You can't just let your defense bleed 12 play 60-yard drives for touchdowns because you're just playing soft all the way down the field if Jair's not out there.
I'm not going to go over too much of it because I have it in my Moldy, so I'll hit on it a little bit more then. But yeah, my main thing is if you don't trust the guys that you have on the field when Jair goes down, why the hell didn't you make a change earlier in the season or in the off season?
Yep.
And I tried to look at some things earlier today and look for, is there a guy out there in the free agent pool that they could bring in on short term? And you got like Michael Ojemudia and Xavier Howard, but it and I don't know if there's a tool that I can go on and look at other teams like practice squads to see if there's somebody that they could pick up like they did with Razul. But that's my whole thing. If you don't trust the guys that you have when your star goes down, why the hell didn't you make a change?
Yeah, and I'm not sure where to put this one, but the it's I can't tell if it's stale or moldy. It's moldy because of how the game turned out, but you signed Robert Rochelle to the active roster and then you leave him as an inactive today when you know that Jair, like, even if he made it through the game, he was playing he was playing limited snaps. Like the first drive for Chicago, I think he played less than half of the defensive snaps out there. And so it's like, if that's already the plan, why don't you have every corner on your active roster up? Like, I, I just, that's one of those where, and I don't even like, even before the game, I was like, Jair better be healthy. Like, and then the first drive goes through, and everyone, Wes Hodkowitz and Brettel and stuff, they're all going like, ooh, like, so Jair is kind of coming in sub. He started and then he went out and then he came back in for sub
He
packages
played
and
10 snaps. That's what they were saying. He played 10 total snaps today.
yeah. And hey, this isn't about how they're handling Jair. I have no problems with him trying to give it a go. The team, he's obviously medically cleared to an extent that it's like, you're not doing more damage to it by giving it a go today. And I like that he tried to give it a go, but I also like that the team was just like, nope. Like, you feel anything, we're taking you out. We're not letting this be part of the equation of you like further aggravating or making this injury worse. Like, we're just not gonna have it. So I have no problem with that. But if you were gonna treat it with kid gloves, you cannot leave a corner that, by all accounts, the team likes Rochelle a lot. Like, we've heard it in preseason. They were like, we've got to try. We so want to keep this guy on the active roster. And then, oh, we were so lucky to get him back on the practice squad. He's out of elevations. They've signed him to the active roster already this season. And it's just like, yeah, Stokes is like, they don't want to play Stokes at this point. They didn't want to play Valent, to the point that they put Nixon at outside. And I do think it's time to end the Nixon experiment. Like, fuck it, just play him on offense already
That's
at
my
this point.
Moldy. So
Yeah,
we'll,
sorry,
we'll, we'll cover that a little bit later.
yeah, but more to the point of, like I said, just sticking with the whole like, use like I said, it get the part I have a problem with is, you obviously came into this game expecting Jair to play limited snaps one way or the other, whether he made it to halftime like he did or if he made it through the whole game. You can't, with how your corners have played of late, you can't not have every tool at your disposal available for you. So yeah, like I said, I'm not exactly, I can't decide exactly where, because it is a little bit of a 2020 hindsight to it. That's why I'm bringing it up now. But yeah, anything else you had for Stale today?
Yeah, and this might piss a lot of people off, so sit back but Packer fans, you are in my stale this week for a couple of reasons. One is the whole Quay Walker thing. Yeah, he didn't look great today, but to be honest, none of our linebackers played great today, but you sure didn't call them out. You stuck with the Quay Walker, you know, the Quay Walker stuff. And that that's that I'm trying to put it into words. It's I think you're stuck on the whole, well, he was a first rounder. Right, but how close was Edge Cooper to being a first rounder? Everybody and their mother had him projected as a first rounder. They're the same friggin' player. For the most part, they're the same friggin' player. They're both athletic freaks. They're both off-ball linebackers. I have to say, Quay looked decent in pass coverage. It was just more close to the line stuff that he looked kind of rough on. But, you know, now you got to look at Edge Cooper. There towards the end of the game, when the 3rd and 19 completion that they had, who was the one that missed the sack on Caleb Williams to allow him out? That was Edge Cooper.
Oh no,
And
that was
why?
JJ. That was JJ on that one.
Oh, was it? And
Yeah,
I swore it
Edge's
was Cooper.
no Edge's problem today was he could not read angles. He was the reason that the Bears got their first field goal, because he took a poor angle on Caleb Williams when Williams broke the pocket. I think he had 3 total where each time he took too shallow of an angle, Williams beat him to the sideline, and like he just was terrible as a spy. And yeah, like you said, but it's one of those where there's got to be a scapegoat. And instead of just saying linebackers suck today, it's like Quay was extra terrible kind of thing and stuff. And I'm not giving up on him. I know that I'm looking like the fool for being that way, but it like you said, nobody at the second level played good today. It was just a rough game from the second level. I do think, and like I said, I am going to keep referring to it over and over, that we will discuss the whole Shane Waldron firing Thomas Brown elevation part of it, because it is a massive part of why the Bears, everyone's like, oh, they were terrible against the Patriots. We will go into that because trust me, like I will put it into a bunch of different layman's terms to try and make you understand why it's not as simple as Bears offense bad, Packers defense should beat them up. Packers defense must suck. So, but yeah, like the amount of, like you said,
Hypocrisy.
confirming priors and against the confirming priors against not wanting to bash other golden childs kind of thing. It's ridiculous. And but honestly, at this point, I'm just like, whatever, it is what it is. I just so want Quay to start playing better, because he was playing solid down the stretch of last season. I thought the Dallas playoff game was one of his better games of his career. It hasn't flipped over for him. I was really hoping the bye would help, but we'll see
What
moving
also
forward.
changed between the playoff game last year and this year? There's a
Yeah.
whole new coaching scheme going on. So you got to give him a little bit of time to adjust to it. But like we've been talking about, it's not so much that he's not been good. I mean that he's been bad. It's that when the others on the team are bad, they don't seem
Yeah.
to call them out. They just want to focus in on Quay, which leads me to my next part of why Packer fans are in the stale, the whole Jair situation. Oh, well, maybe it's time to cut ties with Jair. He's always hurt. It would be different if it was like a Christian Watson situation or an Eric Stokes situation where it's the same injury over and over and over again. But it's not. They are completely different injuries that he suffered throughout his career. His rookie year, it was an ankle injury. The next season, it was like a shoulder injury. A couple years ago, it was the
The shoulder.
collarbone injury.
Yeah, the one where he got run over by Najee Harris. Yeah, that one.
Yeah, and then this year it's been a knee injury, and I think he's had a little bit of with the groin too, but it's mainly been the knee stuff. So it would be different if he was having the same injury over and over and over and over again. But it's not. It's like freak incidents are causing him not to be healthy. But when he's on the field, he's your best corner.
And the defense, and like I brought up, and you were going to bring up in your Moldy segment, Halfley just is so much more confident in what he can do, and that's the luxury of a great corner. And to take this point a step further, Packers fans were hopping up and down mad that they didn't do the trade that Washington did for Marshawn Lattimore. Marshawn Lattimore is basically the same player as Jair. Great cover guy, a little bit bigger and more physical. Jair is a little more athletic, but injury prone. Marshawn Lattimore was not active for his first game as a Washington Commander because he had a pre-existing injury. And so it's like, yes, Green Bay should have done more at corner in the offseason during the draft. They should have tried to do more at the deadline, but it's hilarious that people are hopping on it, or they're jumping Jair about injuries, or they're hopping off the Jair support train because of injury, whatever way you want to look at it. But then it's like, you should have traded for this guy. But it's like
So
that.
mad that he's punching his camera right now.
But it's like, we want you to trade for a guy who's as or more injury prone than Jair is, and it's like, what the fuck do you want them to do? So yeah, I agree. It's stupid. Honestly, like I said, the way you should be looking at the Jair injury is you should be thanking whatever sports god you pray to that he didn't blow his knee. Because I thought he fucking blew his ACL when he did that, and when he torqued his knee in Jacksonville. I thought he was done for the year. And then on top of it, the fact that he's at a point 3 weeks after the injury, that he was at a point where he's like, I'm medically cleared to the point that we're going to give it a go. He was gutting it out and trying to make it happen. But like I said, the reports coming out of this is, it sounds like the team is saying we were just being overcautious with it. and you know, like all the like Rappaport, I just saw it, he's like, no, there's no concern that there's new
It's
injury.
precautionary.
Yeah, so like you should be looking at this very positively. Like there's no setback. You know, it's just it wasn't. He wasn't making
Especially with
mistakes.
who the the opponent is next week.
Yeah, that and the part we haven't even talked about, they probably were like, it's not feeling great and it's fucking Soldier Field. We don't want him to step in a divot or have a chunk of grass fall out and then he really fucks his knee or something else in the knee, you know, the knee bones connected to the you know, you do that song. So yeah, like the Jair shit is just stupid and it's kind of the same people and stuff and you know all that kind of thing. So you know, to each their own, whatever you want to say and stuff. But yeah, it's irritating. But let's just keep it moving along. So I think we both covered one of our Moldies because we kind of flipped. You had Lafleur in Stale, and I had him in Moldy. I had Halfley in Stale, and you had him in Moldy. Anything else that's
It's not so much that I have Halfley and Moldy. I mean, he should be because of the reasons that you put him there. Mine is more concerning the secondary without a Jair.
yeah,
Nixon needs to be off the boundary. Why they didn't use Eric Stokes, but for a handful of snaps. Why they're not doing other things around. Javon Bullard looks like he's uncomfortable in the position that they're putting him right now. The off coverage zone that they seem to run whenever Jair's out. You know, I like Nixon as much as the next person, but he definitely is not a boundary corner. He may be a red zone boundary corner, but that's because he can use his lack of ability in a small amount of space to do stuff in. He's probably better suited as a slot, and he's shown that he's not even great at the slot. But, you know, that's probably his better position. I get that they want to put Javon Bullard in that position. But, you know, you got to do what you got to do to get your best players out on the field. Again, I don't understand the lack of use of other players on the field. They've got guys on the practice squad. You know, Rochelle should have been active. Well, they got Hayden. They've got King. I think there's one other corner that they've got on the
yeah,
on the practice squad. Use them while you got them, and you know, don't just keep throwing the same guys over and over again out there
yeah.
and hoping for a different outcome.
Yeah, like I'm like there's a part of me that's like at least they let Valentine play. I know Valentine didn't have a great game. Oh, it's Valentine. Valentine's the other one that's on the practice squad still.
Yeah,
That's who we but you know, Valentine they let him play, but there's part of me that's like I feel like he's in the doghouse for whatever reason and that was more a circumstance of Jair not being out and yeah, I do think Stokes was a bad matchup for any of the top three corners that or the top three receivers that the Bears have because uh, I think that you know Moore is too physical and shifty for him. Odunze is a better route runner than he can match and stuff. And then Allen, you don't want him on Allen because Allen's usually in the slot anyway. But so okay, like sure, but then like okay, if you really don't want to use him on defense, then you should have activated Rochelle and sat Stokes and like you can have an adult conversation with him and be like, hey, matchup's not great. We want to have a guy that we can throw out there just in case kind of thing. Because yeah, like the whole point of them playing Nixon on the boundary is because they're like, we do not want both of Valentine and Stokes out there. But it's like Stokes, you know, we discussed it with Andy Herman this offseason. Stokes, the likelihood Stokes would be back with Green Bay was a slim, like 10% or less margin. Kind of, he had to basically have, he had to play like he did as a rookie, and it hasn't come back. Valentine is pretty much guaranteed to be on the roster next season because you know he had good film last season. He's on a rookie contract, and even if they draft three corners, like I said, I'm counting on like Stokes being gone. Nixon might be gone, but also like even if he's here, you just you know he's basically like a Dallin Levitt or Zane Anderson on this team, where it's like that guy's not playing defense anymore, kind of thing. But so it's like okay, my whole thing with it is like you've just got to play Valentine no matter what because He needs reps. He's gonna struggle at points like he did today, but he's also gonna have. He had some moments where he was physical against some screens. He was decent in coverage a couple other times, and you've just got to get young guys like that. He's an athlete. Just let him play, let him make mistakes, and live with the outcomes, kind of thing. And yeah, I'm with you. What did I say all of last season when Valentine was up? No, he's not the most talented, whatever and stuff. But I trust that that guy is at least going to play balls to the pedal to the metal, gonna give it his all and stuff. Like if Stokes is so far in the doghouse that you're like either put him on IR with some random injury or cut him at this point because he's doing you no good if you're like he's active every game day, but we're like trying so hard not to put him out there. And then with Nixon, it's like, yeah, I think it's over. Like, I try not to bag on guys like certain people do, but it's been a rough last 3 weeks. And I know some will say like it's a band-aid fix and blah blah blah, all that kind of stuff, but it's like the band-aid fell off too. So, yeah, uh,
Well, here's something for you. Valentine is on the active roster, and he played just a slim amount as Eric Stokes did.
oh, yeah. For some reason, I
And he
thought
wasn't
Valentine was on the
inactive
practice
today.
squad. Yeah,
No, he's on the active roster, and he was not inactive today. The only corner that was inactive today was Rochelle. So that goes back to the whole thing. Why are we running the same guys out there with the same exact results
yeah,
when
uh,
you've got all these other, why not throw Eric Stokes out there? I get what you're saying with the matchups and all
right,
that. You've got your best corner down. You're not going to know what this kid can do unless you put him out there. And he's
right,
still young. He's not like this 30-year-old kid or 30-year-old guy that, is on his last legs. He's still got a bit to him. Ballantyne's older than him. Why isn't he out there? Again, why didn't they activate Rochelle? Why didn't they call up Hayden? Why didn't they call up King? Why aren't we doing these things to fix a problem out there? So that would lead to another part of my moldy is roster development or roster building. How many of these guys are on the roster that we don't that aren't being used but are just wasting a spot? you know, I know we've ragged on this all preseason and we've mentioned it a couple of times on during the season, but Zane Anderson, he's nothing. He's doing nothing. He's not even providing help on special teams because his name's never called on anything. So what good is he to be out there and be on the active roster if you're not using him for anything? Anthony Johnson Jr., you could have at least used him for something.
yep,
What else is there? There's uh right now the backup offensive lineman. Morgan was just put on the IR, so that just killed your backup lineman if something happened to any of them. And we know Walker's dealing with a knee injury. We know Myers is dealing with an injury. We've seen Elton on the injury report several times. That doesn't inspire me with hope if something happens to those guys and the backups have to come in. Uh Linebackers. I get Eric Wilson's been having his moment, but he's definitely not a guy that's going to be a starter. He's going to be a rotational guy. I like Isaiah McDuffie, but again, he's not a starting caliber uh linebacker. He's going to be a tackle machine, but he's not going to be a coverage guy or anything like that. They're not using Tyron Hopper. Uh, Defensive side of the ball, it took until trading Preston Smith to uh, uh, open up a spot for these guys to, get any kind of playing time. Tight end wise, we've got that they picked up that John Fitzpatrick. I didn't see him for nothing today. And Ben Sims has been used very little. Matter of fact, none of the tight ends were used for anything other than blocking today. Tucker had the one
His lone target
thrown
was
at.
the interception. Yeah.
So I mean, what are we keeping these guys on the roster for if they're not going to be used and they're just taking up space? So Moldy Take a Mine is just this roster build.
Yeah, like, and to go into that, and this is gonna kind of go more into what they need to do in the off season and stuff. But yeah, some of the choices, I agree with you. Some of the choices they made going into the season, the one that I harped on today was like basically it's coming more and more clear that their plan at cornerback was pray that Jair is healthy. He's had, like you said, he's just had some unfortunate injuries this season, so he hasn't been, he's missed half the time this season, and then just pray that someone wins the cornerback two spot, and it's like hope, and and when I say hoping is like you're counting on a second year seventh round player who you're not allowing to make mistakes, a guy who hasn't played his position in 1.5 years due to injury in Stokes, and a guy you primarily signed to be a special teams impact player in Nixon, who has just been exposed too often over the last few weeks, and you're trying to square peg in round hole him because you don't want to play Valentine or play Stokes for reasons I don't even know. We're not in alphabet, we're in imaginary, we're in I squared at this point. So it's getting to the point where, yeah, like you said, that part of it, we put Cox in the fresh, but up until this point, it was like okay, like this guy, you kept 6 defensive ends, and he hasn't, forget sniffing the field, he hasn't been active once this season, and now it's almost out of necessity that he's active because you traded Preston away, which I do think is a good bet for the future. I do think it's going to pay dividends and stuff, but like you
I'm
said,
not
up until
against the
this,
whole. I'm not against the whole Preston trade. I
yeah, yeah,
understand
yeah,
it
no,
from both sides.
but no, like, and I'm
It's just
to this
that's what it
point,
took to get
yeah,
somebody
exactly.
else on the field.
So yeah, there's overall, I do think Gutekunst has done a pretty good job of reshuffling the deck after turning the page from the Rogers and Devontae years. He turned the page overall pretty well, but on the margins and a little bit in the meat, because cornerback can't be considered an in the margins position. But there's just been some head scratchers that you're kind of like, especially when at the base of it, what has the talk been for this season? We're competitors this season. We are here to make noise and be contenders. But you've left a key position in quarterback on the shoulders of hopes and prayers, and some other roster spots where you're, like you said, you've either kept guys for special teams reasons, and in the Zane Anderson case, you hope he never plays defense, or in the Wilson case where it's like, okay, and there's some Wilson truthers out there that are like, no, like he should start over Quay and stuff. You can't draw up a play for Eric Wilson for 60 plays out of a game. The only non-drawn up play that he's made is one where Anthony Richardson threw the ball right into his chest. Like, I'm sorry, like I know that sounds really harsh, but all the plays that everyone pats him on the back for, they're all ones where the thing was drawn up for him to be in the ideal position to make something happen. Again, credit that he made it, but when it's like read the play, make the play, it's very hit or miss with Wilson. And not saying that Welch would have been great here, but he's a younger player with, I think, higher upside. So yeah, we can go back and forth on this. All these are, like I said, these are questions to be answered in the off season, and but I do think it is bringing the ceiling down on where this team can go, because you've taken potential talent off the roster for, players that who they are, but we know that at their listed position they're not ceiling raisers. So it's like I the getting back to the point you're making, it's just like, why did we do certain ones of these moves? So yeah, it's unfortunate, but that's the deck that the Packers are dealing with. Like I said, at the heart of it, the basis of this team was always that you were going to have a top five offense with a strong run game and not necessarily MVP candidate play from Love, but at least knocking on the door of it. And injuries and poor decision makings have met in the middle to hamper this offense. And at the end of the day, I do think, which is not great roster building consideration, but I do think they were like, we are screwed. Like, we're gonna fix the safety room. We should have a strong pass rush room. We're gonna start to rebuild our linebacker room. We'll get to cornerback later, but this team rests on the shoulders of this offense scoring more than the opponent kind of thing, and defense is going to make enough plays to help win the game and stuff. So I don't like that they kind of just punted on cornerback this season, but that's what they've done, and alas, that's why it's in our moldy this week. But also, it's what they've got to work through to get through the season. So anything else you wanted to put in moldy, or otherwise I was going to go into the topic that I wanted to touch on, which was the concept of the unscouted offense the Bears threw out there today.
Just one last thing, and then you can have your say on it. The Moldy is the refs for today. How they missed that friggin' false start, I really have no clue. It was plain as day. And, that was what led me up to thinking that they were going to overturn the Watson catch. Because if you're going to miss that big of a false start, how are you going to make the correct call on whether it was a catch or not? It was clear as day. The running back stepped when he shouldn't have stepped. It wasn't like it was just a little motion. It was a full on step to his left. And yeah.
And I tweeted it, two guys, four eyes, and you missed it, kind of thing. And I'm sure that the league's quote unquote cover up will be like, oh, he reset. And so, but it doesn't matter that he reset. He moved to start the play before the play started, kind of thing. And the other one that I thought was pretty egregious, and Paul Noonan was on it too, was the offsides that Lucas got called for. Wright clearly gets out of his stance before Lucas moves, and how can you tell? Lucas is staring him in the face, and he literally moves because Wright moves, and the refs botched that one too. And I think also the part that was funny about that one is Devontae was absolutely adamant that one of the interior line, because he wasn't pointing at Darnell Wright, he was pointing at whoever was across from him. That like,
Well, yeah, that was a funny camera moment because they both had their fingers in each other's face,
yeah,
and Devontae was actually slapping the guy in the helmet, and yeah. So I mean, and if you think about it, that's been the only times that they nail Lucas on offsides is when they friggin' mess up a false start penalty. So yeah.
yep. So okay, so I'll try to keep this because we are crossing hour and 15 minutes at this point. But so okay, every
Saul's gonna kill you.
so a lot of Packers fans, they only looking at the game on paper, which you should not do. So they look at last week. The Patriots played the Bears. One, I believe the game was in Foxborough, so it's a road game for the Bears. So Patriots have a really good defensive system. Even during the Brady years, the backbone is that Belichick is one of the greatest defensive minds. Gerard Mayo, the new coach, he is a Belichick disciple. They still play really good defense. It's whether they have enough offense to win some games out there. So the Patriots rack up 9 sacks. I think like 8 of them were in the second half of the game against the Bears. It was something ridiculous. And so everyone's like, oh my God, the Packers should feast and all that kind of stuff. So, timetable of this. The Packers are on their bye week leading up to that Patriots Bears game. Waldron gets fired like the day or 2 days after that game. So to that point, the Packers, so that's week 10. The Packers have 9 plus games worth of film that they're like, this is what the Bears are doing, this is what their keys are, this is what they do with their personnel. And you looked at it from a league-wide standpoint, everyone was going, there are no hot routes, there's no this, everyone, it's Waldron's offense is like it's the air raid in like what you would think the air raid offense would be, where it's like four verts all the time, and we'll get a mismatch out there and stuff. So you go from that, and the Packers are building their defensive game plan off of that's what we're gonna see. And it gets compounded because you're on the bye week, so you're not practicing on the field, so you're just doing film study meetings, and you're just doing a lot of between the ears training leading up to the game. Fast forward to last week, Monday or Tuesday, Waldron gets fired. You have, everyone's like, oh well, this happened. Thomas Brown was in the same position with the Panthers last year. You can't use that. The Panthers have no talent on offense, no quarterback Bryce Young last year, and it's like, so you're like, you're trying to say like, okay, we'll try and pull film from what the Panthers did last year, but we're also going to try and figure out how they're going to utilize it with the talent they have on their roster, which the receiving talent is miles better than what the Panthers had last year. And Caleb, I know he's struggled the last few weeks, but he has at his highs played better than Bryce Young did. And so the Packers are, they have the idea of what they're going to see when they take the field on defense. But what they're greeted with is, instead of anything that resembles the offense the Bears ran for their first 9 games of the season, they come out and what I deem pick up to Mississippi offense, where when we all played recess football, and it's like how long do it's 3 Mississippi, right? So the Bears are like, on 2 Mississippi, the ball is gone, and Brady did a really good job of saying like they were taking 2.2 seconds to throw the ball, they're just over 2 seconds, and like this is where it combines with Halfley going to soft coverage when Jair's not on the field. It's like Halfley is partly hedging his bets on, I can play soft coverage because there's still going to be some element of 4 verts. So they're going to be running into our off coverage and yada, 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 all that kind of stuff. Instead, the Bears run more of like a college spread offense, where it's like, we're going to throw quick screens, we're going to spread the field horizontally, we're going to stretch the defense sideline to sideline instead of line of scrimmage to back of the end zone. And so what the Packers are prepared for is just totally out the window. So the layman's term I would put this into is, you're studying to take the driver's test, and then you can get all the like whether you're taking the written or the on road, you can get the test book. You can so I'll do it for both sides. You can get your state's driver's your written test notebook. For the road test, it's like, okay, I'm going to take the road test in this area. I know that we're going to go, through us, I might go on a highway over here. I might go on the interstate. I'm going to have to park in some way. I might have to reverse or something, whatever. And then the day before the test, they're like, so for me, it's like, you're not taking the Hawaii written test. You're taking the Michigan written test. Or for you, you're not taking the Iowa written test. You're taking the California written test. And it's like, wait a minute, like what? And then, so you're trying to pick up that book and study. And it actually, this is where I liken it to the Packers. You're like, well, this happened to Thomas Brown last year. He ran the Panthers offense after their original OC got fired. So we'll see what he did with the Panthers. And it's like, okay, maybe that matches up what they're going to do, but they have different personnel kind of thing. And then on the driving test, it's like, oh, you're expecting to drive from this police station in this city district, whatever it's called. But then it's like, oh, the station closed. You got to drive 50 miles the other way to this city you've never been to and take it over here. And you're like, does this have the same, what's the tolerance on rights on red, or who has right of way at, can you U-turn at every left turn? There's different nuances to what you can do and stuff. And it's that going in blind where you're like, we've prepared a certain way for for a whole week, and because it's a division opponent, you've got scouting. Obviously, it's a little different because Caleb Williams is a rookie quarterback and all that kind of stuff. But you've seen a bunch of these players before, and it's like, oh shit, like it's out the window because. And the way you can tell this is a problem is because the Packers offense, until it got into the red zone, they were just chewing up the Bears. Like LaFleur knew exactly what Eberflus was going to do in certain situations. All of Christian Watson's receptions were off of brilliant schemed up routes because it's like we can manipulate his coverage tendencies and get Christian open on a follow over, all that kind of stuff. Same with Jacobs. It's like if we crease him on the inside, Josh is going to have some good running room. Whereas on defense, it's like, oh, like what the fuck are we looking? There was different moments where you're like, they didn't do that. And one of the plays that I point to is when they just flat out. It's the play that we got called for the bogus personal foul penalty, where they pivot out and they basically run a lead sweep with Caleb Williams as the running back. And the reason I say that penalty was absolute bullshit is he is not a quarterback. When you take the ball and you tuck it and run following a lead blocker, you are no longer a quarterback. And his feet were not touching the ground. He wasn't out of bounds yet. And McKinney tried not to hit him and he fell down and acted like he died. It's like, to me, if you're going to get that call, you better be concussed or something better be broken. Like, and a lot of Packer fans and writers were right to point out, like, Jacobs was clearly out of bounds on a later drive, and the same thing happened, and no flag. And like I said, I'm all for protecting quarterbacks when they're in the pocket and all that kind of shit. But when you clearly dictate that my quarterback is a runner on this play, you don't get no protections that you usually get because you can't, and that's the part, I hate the Mahomes thing where he tiptoes down the sideline and he's like, ooh, like, that was the play that we got bullshit. It's the same play from last year where it's like, he's like, oh, I'm going to tiptoe down the sideline, get like 5 extra yards. And he got blasted while he was still in bounds. And it's like, penalty. It's like, no, you play stupid games, win stupid prizes. So, yeah, but getting back to the, everyone's complaining, like, why isn't there pressure? Why isn't there pressure? Two things combined. The lack of knowledge of what the Bears are going to do because it's a completely unscouted look, and then you tie in Halfley being a little more conservative because Jair is not out there. You're already behind the 8 ball with just one of those things being true, but when you combine the two, like, I know people are going to say that Green Bay was bad overall on defense, but realistically, they did for what Halfley was asking them to do and how the offense kept putting them in adverse situations because you come up empty on 2 red zone possessions. The defense did enough. And yes, like, I want more from it. But like I said, at the end of the game, 1st and 2nd down on the Bears' final drive, at the point of the game where it's like they have to throw the ball, what happens? Rashawn kicks Braxton Jones' ass on 2 consecutive plays. You're playing tighter coverage, and you put him into 3rd and 19, and then Halfley backs it off. Inagbury misses the sack, and then Caleb rolls out and throws into soft zone coverage coming across the field. It's like, and so, yeah, you combine all of those things, and, everyone, the part about it that makes it so frustrating is instead of truly looking for the why, everyone just wants the easy answer. And it kind of goes back to your point about like bashing on Quay, where it's like, well, the pass rush has been disappointing all season, but instead of considering why, they only look at, oh, there's no pressures. The pass rush still sucks. We're paying Rashawn Gary a shitload of money to be shitty. We drafted Lucas 13th overall to suck ass. Like, no, like, context matters here. And if you can't understand the don't go belittling players because your understanding of the game is lacking. Off the soda box, we're hitting an hour and a half. Joe, any final thoughts on this game?
The last one that I would have to say is you kind of hit it within this kind of the same thing with Nixon. I think Inogberry has played out. I don't think he's been adding anything more special to this defense than he had in the past. So I'm ready for that experiment to be done too. Why he's taking up more snaps than a lot of these other guys, I really have no clue on. But other than that, I'm with you 100% on what you said, so I'm good.
Yeah, my whole thing with the Inogberry part is, I do think he's making at least one or two plays a game that it's like good play kind of thing. But my whole thing with it is like to my whole thing with it is you're making the Preston play to give Lucas that move is for Lucas, and yeah, and that's just where I'm gonna just end it. There is like let Lucas and Rashawn play together, and I'm gonna just nip it there for this week. So at the end of the day, it was a frustrating game. It was a stressful game. Marisol's Chargers also had a stressful game for very different reasons, but we're both just grateful that we both have W's on the record. And like I said, Green Bay, there are slim hopes because Detroit is just playing so fucking well this season. They're, all the things that we're criticizing Green Bay for doing, mental mistakes, turnovers, whatever. Detroit is just playing such overall clean football. So, the margin, the chance to win the division is so thin right now unless things change. But there is a chance. There's a slim, but there by winning this game, you have a chance. If you lost this game today, the division is fucking done. I know some people are like, oh, they'd still be in the 7th position because the Niners blew their game and blah 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 and all that kind of stuff. But the division would be just totally ixnay unless the Lions and Vikings both fell in the gutter because they both win. They stay at 1 and 2 losses respectively. And the Packers just have to keep pace. And obviously they're going to play both of those teams one more time. But to have a chance, you had to win this game today. And they did by the tip of Carl Brooks's finger, they did that much enough to win this game today. But we'll wrap it up today. We'll put a pin in it until our preview for the 49ers coming up. Please check out the website, ohanapackers.org. More blog posts are going up. I'm sure our writers will have a bunch of things to say. Carlos wrote this great article about why this game was super important for the Packers to win. And like I just went over, like Joe went over in the show, thank God they decided to get serious for but one play at the end of the game to secure the win. Check out our merch, support us, support the channel, support the initiatives that Joe's got going on with support or with troop appreciation and cancer awareness. Follow the podcast on social media at Ohana_Packers on Twitter until it finally dies. We will be making a Blue Sky account sooner than later, but it's not quite ready yet. Instagram at Ohana Packers Edition. And on Facebook, just Ohana Packers Edition. Find the page; it's there. All of our new posts are getting announced there. Podcast episode updates are getting posted on all those social medias. So keep it focused there to get all of our updates. Please follow the podcast on your favorite podcasting apps. Give us a like and a subscribe if you're enjoying it. And positive or negative comments, we want to hear it all to make the content you're looking for. The Packers. I can't stress this enough. They do the bare minimum to keep pace in the division and keep their chances alive. It's got a pulse.
Hey, no comments from the peanut section back there.
The Packers they keep their slim division hopes alive with this win over the Bears. Matt LaFleur extends his streak to 11-0 against the Bears. They pour one out in memory of Preston Smith's Packers career. He was on the team that kept going, that kept this undefeated streak going. But remember, at the end of the day, go Pack go. The Bears still suck. And
The Bears still suck. The Bears still suck.
Green Bay hustle, grind it up. Hit the field, we don't bluff. Touchdown dances, feel the love. Jordan's got that MVP stuff. It's time for OPE, let's go. Packers bringing that show. It's time for OU, know who wanna go, gonna glow.